Okay, without further ado, we get to start our day. And I am so excited to be able to introduce to you our headliner speaker, Tara Nanayakkara. Tara is an accomplished author who has published 4 novels. Originally from Sri Lanka, she immigrated to Canada with her family at a young age. Growing up, she faced challenges as a visually impaired individual in a society that terms like BIPOC is not yet common. Despite these obstacles, Tara's persevered and refused to let her disability define her. Tara, please come forward.
Hello, everyone. I am deeply honored to be here today. If you had asked me a month ago, would I be standing in front of a podium and talking about myself for 30 minutes? I would have laughed. I said, no, but it was just unreal. Amanda called me the day before Good Friday, and she asked me if I would like to participate in this event. And as I said, for me, it's a great honor. So thank you for having me here. So, I actually was born in what was then known as Ceylon, back in the 60s. So I'm dating myself here. Um, we came to Canada. Actually, my father lived in Toronto for 2 years, and then he heard that Newfoundland was a quiet place to raise a family. So the rest of us followed 2 years later, and we settled in Newfoundland. And to say the least, it has been a challenge on many fronts. I was born with congenital cataract, and thanks to the brilliance of a Sri Lankan doctor who is long past, his name was Dr. Rajasekara. He was way ahead of his time. He gave me what little vision I have, because initially I was born only seeing shadows. And then he did a procedure known as a needling, and that gave me about, let's say, 10% vision in my left eye and about 5% in my right eye. And the strangest thing of all with my vision, my color perception is dead on. It's like any person with full sight. I guess you can see that because I'm all matchy matchy. That's just how I roll. But anyway, the thing is, I have faced a lot of challenges simply because not only am I visually impaired, and people have a lot of perceptions about that and misconceptions as well. And I'm also a visible minority. These days, that's known as BIPOC. So I have felt very different my entire life. I have never been able to fit in. I am the proverbial round, the the round hole, the round peg going into the square hole. That's who I am, and that has, you know what? I've learned to embrace that over the years. But in the beginning, I was in denial. I told myself I was like everybody else, but you know what? The reality is, I'm not like everybody else. I am not perceived the same way. When I was growing up, I used to think, oh, yeah, I just have bad eyes. I couldn't even bring myself to say to people I had congenital cataract. I just had bad eyes. Um, I had no role models who were legally blind and visibly a visible minority at the same time. I didn't have either of those. So I was kind of on my own. My parents didn't send me to the school for the blind in Halifax. So I basically had a sink or swim scenario when I was in the school system. Uh, I could say a lot about that, but I will just say that it was very, very difficult. I had exceptional teachers in grade 8, but beyond that, honestly, no. I mean, some kindnesses were given to me, but in general, I was a social misfit as well as an academic struggling. Academically, I struggled a lot. But to fit in with our South Asian friends, I used to lie about my marks because South Asians tend to have the reputation of becoming doctors and engineers and getting the top marks and getting the top scholarships. And when you are raised in that community, if you don't measure up to that standard, you are looked down upon. People might not tell you that to your face, but it's kind of understood. It's like, oh, okay, you know. But in my case, I used to fit in with people who were my age and who came from that background. I used to lie about my marks. Hey, I barely got through. Sometimes I wonder if I was pushed ahead because it was very difficult. Today, we would have an itinerant teacher to help students with disabilities. There, I was on my own. My mother would help me at home because she was a school teacher herself. But I just had a lot of trouble understanding concepts. But I did get through it. And also, socially, I was not accepted in school. People, my differences. And also, not only the fact that I was so different, I cannot pick up on social cues. When you are legally blind, you cannot make eye contact with people. You cannot initiate a conversation with someone because you don't know if they're even looking at you or looking out to sea. You don't know. So you could be talking to the air. And especially, this is more prevalent if you're in a group of two or more people. So unless they say my name or direct a comment specifically geared towards me, I don't know. Are you talking to me? And my teachers used to criticize that to my parents during parent-teacher interviews. Oh, Tara thinks she thinks she's so special. People go down the hall and call out to her and she just ignores them. She's too good for them. Literally, that's what they used to tell my parents. And my grade 4 teacher told my mother that I was backward. And that stayed with me for my entire life. So was there a lot of negativity surrounding my education growing up? Of course there was. But somehow I got through school. I actually was taking piano lessons when I was 7 because it was determined that I had perfect pitch. But my piano teacher, and my mother thought it would be brilliant for me to learn piano the way a normal sighted person would learn it. So what happened was the sheet music was blown up to humongous proportions, and I was literally supposed to say, this is a keyboard. This podium is the keyboard. I was supposed to what? Learn to play the piano like this? I wasn't doing that. That's just too dumb for words. So what I ended up doing, I used to play by ear. And my mother would play a bar of music for me and that I would echo it. And even popular music, I learned to play that by listening to tapes, and I would play back and rewind each part so I could get the chords right. And that's how I learned to play. I'm sorry to say I don't give my piano teachers much credit for that because actually it was my mother who did all the work with me at home, and they would just circle different mistakes that I made and criticize me because I wasn't really getting it the way they wanted me to. But and I used to compose music, but they kind of, not that they discouraged it, they didn't encourage it either. And do I love to play the piano today? To a point, but the pleasure is gone because I don't have access to a tape recorder, so I can't teach myself things anymore. Because now everything is digital. Digital has some disadvantages. I mean, I learned at a time when typewriter was king. And even my writing, I started writing when I was early teens, and my father, he brought home a Selectric IBM typewriter. And at that time, that was like high tech. It was the coolest thing. And as a result of that, I was able to start to write because my handwriting is not fit for anyone to read. It's just bad. So I was typing everything. And when I started writing, music is what inspired me. A psychic I recently spoke to told me that I channel my words through my novels. I channel it because I hear the music and the story appears in my mind like a movie. And then I just sit there and then I start to write. And I'll keep repeating the same music over and over again till that scene has been created. And that's to this day, that's how I write. That's how Priya's World was written. That's how Dawning of a New Garden was written. That's how Cardboard Dreams is written. And even to this day, when I hear the music that I used to help me write it, I'm transported back to that time in my life when I actually wrote it. And that's, that's always been my way. And aside from writing and playing the piano, I love to cook for the family anyway. And I take a lot of joy with that. And music is huge in my life. I listen to a lot of easy listening and new age music. And I go for walks, but all of that is great. And I have a wonderful family to support me today. But that wasn't always the case. I grew up around a lot of negativity. A lot of, on one hand, there was a denial of my vision. Oh, you can do anything, you can be anything you want. But you know what? That's great in theory, but in real life, it doesn't really work that way. And on the other hand, I was like, oh, you cannot do this, you cannot do that. First, when I was growing up, my parents tried to use the idea that being South Asian, girls don't do this, girls don't do that. So I was allowed. I kidded myself thinking, oh, I'm not allowed to do this because I'm a girl. But later I realized I can't do this because I can't see. But the problem is I had to live like a double life. Like in front of my friends, I had to pretend that I was, in their eyes, normal, but I was left out of a lot of things. And again, this goes back to being a social handicap. And it's, you know what? That hasn't changed. We live in a city where transportation isn't the greatest. And everyone, even sighted people, will complain about what Metro bus is like. And taking Go Bus has its challenges, where many people with disabilities already know this. Um, but I have a wonderful husband and children and a brother who'll drive me where I need to go, which is great, but not everybody's lucky like that. And the reality is, I can't just randomly say, oh, I'll meet a friend for coffee. They have to either be willing to pick me up or I have to be dropped off. And that is a huge social obstacle. It would be lovely to just get in a car and being able to drive somewhere and meet people, but that's not going to happen. So I don't get involved in a lot of activities because just trying to get there it's almost, it's not worth the stress of it. Like even for volunteering, sure, it'd be nice to, put in a few hours here, a few hours there, but if you have to constantly worry, how are you going to get there? It just like it takes the spontaneity out of it. It takes the joy out of it for me. And people, not everybody is generous enough to say, oh, I'll pick you up, don't worry about it. I have very few people outside my family who are willing. Like I have some long-term friends who will do that, but generally making new friends is, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it's not the easiest thing in the world. And as I said before, in a social situation, like all of you here, you have name tags, but what I don't want to have remember every single person's name because how am I going to remember all of that? For you guys, you will connect with people and you'll see the name tag. You don't have to remember anyone's name. And also, people have this misconception that if I haven't seen them, say in a few weeks, a year, whatever, I'll just automatically know them by their voice. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes people's voices, especially on the phone, can be incredibly similar. And I'm not going to assume that I know someone because of their voice. And that assumption it's just, it doesn't work. So when people, for me, the best format is when people come up to me and say, oh, hi, I'm so and so. And that's what works for me. And I mean, and also, even like, say, my own family members, if I'm out with my husband and for whatever reason, he left the room and changed to an entirely different outfit that I didn't even recognize. And he came in and he didn't speak. He didn't speak to me. And he say he was over by the window or something. I wouldn't know who it was. And that is what it's like to live with vision like what I have. People just think, oh, you can't see well, we'll make these adaptations for you, which is great. But people don't think about the social aspect of it. Like even when I'm reading, I suffer from major eye strain after reading for a while. And if I sit at a computer, I'm always hunched over, always hunched over. I hold a book up, I have to hold it up like this. Like when I'm signing books for you guys later, I'll be bent over. It's just how it is. I mean, that's the reality. And I mean, I don't know. Has my experience with being visually impaired, has it made me stronger? I don't know. People tell me I'm strong, but I don't know. Maybe, but I think we all have something in our lives. And, a person with a disability can tell me, you are lucky to have the vision that you have. And I honor that and I accept it. And I say, yeah, you know what? You're 100% right. But if a person is 100% able-bodied and they have all their facilities, I don't appreciate it when they tell me that. But if you have a disability, go for it, as far as I'm concerned. So again, I have to go back to the whole concept of misconceptions. And also, between that and being a visible minority and speaking perfect English, and people say, oh, you speak good English. That's actually happened to me. It's happened to my children. It's on a regular basis, even though they were born here and born at the Grace and at the Health Sciences, they're told that. I'm told that. People say, oh, do you like the weather here? And what are they basing it on? My skin color. Why don't you talk to me for a couple of minutes and then determine your questions? Because I find that also very uncomfortable when, people make assumptions. So here I am. My children say when they're asked these questions, it makes them feel different. And I say to them, hey, at least you guys are able-bodied. You don't have a disability. So imagine having the disability compounded with the feeling of being totally different. So these are things that people tend to take for granted. But you know what? You learn to live with it and you kind of accept it. And I've come a long way. My first marriage ended in divorce because I won't go into a lot of detail about that, but I was married to a fellow Sri Lankan. We had what was known as a proposal or an arranged marriage, which was, my choice. I was fine with that. And there were some good times, but there were some dark times too. And he was very emotionally controlling, emotionally abusive. And that's all in the past now. And I've actually forgiven him. So that's, way down the road. But we went through a messy custody battle. And at that time, the opposing party tried to say that I wasn't a fit mother because I had a disability. And they tried to hold that against me. It was a 3 years long process, but I won full custody of my children. And I raised them here in Newfoundland. I was living in Ontario at the time. And, people were saying, oh, well, how are you ever going to manage if you leave that marriage? How are you going to manage? I mean, you're not earning much. You have a disability, and how is it going to be? I said, you know what? I'm going to make it. And guess what, guys? I did. I published novels. I was happily remarried in 2014, and I'm still writing. And actually, you know what? At this point, my life couldn't be better. So yeah, guys, I made it. Mhm. So does anybody have any, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for me? Sure.
That goes to Jen.
Good morning. What? Yeah, now we're on. Okay. Hi, this is Jen Dion with Persistence Theater, and thank you for your presentation. I was really interested about what you said about others not picking up social cues. When you are in larger meetings, do you have some very clear tips that you would share with us to help make it easier for you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The first one would be whether, unless you're like a really, really close friend or something, I'm not going to know who you are out of context. So, if you just simply introduce yourself, oh, I am so and so, and we met at this particular place, or nice to meet you, either way, but just, say your name. That's all you have to do. I'm so and so, and then I'll say my name. And then that, puts me in a positive frame of mind because then I can communicate effectively with you. But it's awkward if I'm standing there and I'm supposed to know who you are and I don't know who you are. And then you'll be asking me questions and I'll be very vague and indirect because I don't know who I'm talking to. So that's one tip. Tell me who you are. Also, I'm not afraid to be asked if I need any help or assistance. I know there's some people who say, yeah, I can do everything on my own. Thank you so much. I don't need help. But hey, I'm not afraid to ask. And if you feel like offering, please offer. That would help me a lot. I find that I mean, to me, those are the biggest things. And also, let's just say now we were at a buffet or something, and I think we're having a buffet today, according to the agenda. But anyway, I can't see everything on the table. Tell me what you guys have. What is that? What is that pink thing, or what is that thing over there? Can you read what that says, please? Yeah, that's So direct me. Tell me what there is. I mean, my children can do this now backwards from the time they were 4 and 5. They'll, when we're going anywhere, I'll say, Mama, so this is that and this is this, and they'll help me, and because of that, they've become very empathetic to other people with different needs. So that's another thing. I mean, and going down steps is very difficult for me. And also being in groups of conversation with people, ask me to say my name or ask me a question that's relevant to me, then I can answer it. Because otherwise, I don't know who I'm talking to. Like, I'll walk into a store and they'll say, oh, hi there. And I don't know, are they talking to me or the person who came in behind me? I don't know. Because sometimes I've been in a situation where I answered to someone and they weren't even talking to me in the first place. So that becomes very awkward. So those are some tips that I would, suggest for when you find that I'm in a public meeting such as this.
Thank you, Tara.
You're
This is
welcome.
Kathy. I have a question around your career. I know that you're an accomplished author, but I'm wondering, did you come to that decision because finding employment was so very difficult as a person with a disability, or was that your career choice? I'm just curious because I know some people who have written books have done so because they haven't been able to find competitive, engaged employment. And I just wanted to check to see if that was your experience.
Yes and no. When I was younger, I had a passion for broadcasting. My ultimate dream was to be a radio interviewer. I never wanted to be a TV reporter because I knew with my vision that'd be difficult. But I thought it'd be cool to work in radio. In fact, right through my teens, my ultimate dream was to be a broadcaster, part-time broadcaster, and part-time writer. So the writing, I thought this would be an ideal situation. But then I remember when I was at MUN, my first year, they had the whole set up with they had what was the name of the CHF? I can't remember the name of the radio station. Anyway, it was so long ago. But I remember going in and there was a guy there and I saw all these boards. And back then it wasn't digital. Everything was, records and 500 buttons here, 500 buttons there. And you had to spin records like on WKRP, So I thought that'd be the coolest thing in the world, right? But I took one look at that keyboard and I'm thinking, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, I can't do this. But then I really thought, but maybe I could have a non-technical job in broadcasting, and I'd love to be a radio interviewer. And I actually went around with a tape recorder, and I went to CBC, I went here, I went there, and they said, well, take some journalism courses. And at the time, MUN had a program called MUN Extension. They had a broadcasting program there. I loved it, but they cut funding, and that was the end of that program. And it just became harder and harder and harder. And everyone kept saying, keep plugging away, something will work out. I was in university. I dropped out of university, and I'm going to tell you why. My parents said, go to university and get a degree. Okay, what degree should I get? Well, you were good in history, get a history degree. Okay, and minor in English. Okay, what am I going to do with this degree? Oh, you'll get a job. Okay, what kind of job? Oh, you'll get a job. Yes, but what kind of job? You'll get a job. But doing what? Oh, they'll hire you for broadcasting. Just get the degree first. You know what? That was no motivation for me. I mean, I had no incentive. I left university in my third year in good standing. Believe it or not, my marks in university were better than they ever were in school, which is ironic. But I think math was my downfall earlier, but but the thing is, I didn't really have the motivation in university, because if you're just told, oh, you'll get a job, but doing what? You'll get a job, this loop going on, there's no motivation, there's no inspiration in that. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just do the writing. Of course, my parents were very angry when I dropped out of university. My mother even phoned the professor and yelled at him. Yeah, she actually did that. Wasn't good, but yeah. So anyway, oh, the memories. Oh, how they come back. But so I, started writing my first novel, To Wish Upon a Rainbow. I was 19 and hired an editor and all of that. But I don't even think the publishers believed in me, because did they believe in promoting my work? No, they didn't. I had to phone and make calls for interviews and things at radio stations. I had to do that. But it's almost like, oh yeah, she has a disability. She has this, she has that. No one ever took me seriously. I remember, and I got discouraged. I don't think, okay, I'm not a 9 to 5 person anyway. I more have an artistic nature that way. And I like to make my own hours. I mean, when I wrote Priya's World, I'd be up till 2 a.m. writing, because I'm a night person. But the writing was something I thought I could do, but did I have roadblocks? Of course I did. Many, many roadblocks. And something comes back to me when I was living in Toronto. My brother was living there at the same time. And he told me that a job recruiter told him, if your name was John Smith, you wouldn't have any trouble getting a job. This was back in 1989. And I'm thinking, and of course he did, he did well after that. But I'm thinking, when publishers saw my name, who knows what was going through their mind, what preconceived notions, because I noticed a strange pattern over the years. I could write something and I could be told 100 reasons why it wasn't going to work, yet somebody else could write the same thing, and then they'd say, oh, we have a team of editors that'll help you bring this up to snuff. But no one believed in me. No one said, I will work with you to bring this to fruition, to make this great. No one actually, it was like, if I had one flaw, well, that's the reason to write me off. And that was my situation. And even, writing Priya's World, I'm the one who had to push for promotions. I'm the one who had to do that, because the publisher, I remember when Priya's World came out, I called the editor-in-chief and I said, people are always selling books at Costco. Why don't you set me up at Costco? She just ignored the email. So, what do you do? What do you do? That's my question.
Understandable. Thank you, Tara. Does anybody else have any questions? Any other questions for Tara? Elizabeth, all the way from New Brunswick. There you go. The last question of the day.
Introduce yourself first.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth. It's so lovely to hear you speak this morning.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm just wondering, I know you said you'll be selling your books later.
Yeah.
Do you have a few moments maybe to tell us, I don't know how many books there are, but like a quick summary or note about each book? Or
Okay.
if that's all right,
Of
I'd love
course.
to hear about them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
First of all, before I get into that, I would simply like to say that the one book I wish that you guys could read, but it's still looking for a publisher, it's called Sightlines, which is about exactly what we're talking about here, a memoir about my life dealing with being BIPOC and also legally blind, but I don't have a publisher for that yet. Otherwise, I would be selling that book here too as well. But Priya's World is about a girl who grows up. Well, she actually lives in Ontario, half Sri Lankan, half Newfoundlander. Her parents die in helicopter crash, and she's basically coping. How she copes with the death of her parents is descending into anorexia. That's how and so basically the book is about the eating disorder and a love interest and family secrets. And Dawning of a New Garden is a sequel to Priya's World, and that is her life, Priya's life, 10 years later. She's overcome the eating disorder, but she's facing other challenges and rebuilding her life and the garden is like a metaphor. And for Cardboard Dreams, that is actually sort of a remake of To Wish Upon a Rainbow, but it's a different format. Basically, it's about a husband and wife. Their marriage is in turmoil when the husband's brother and and wife are killed in a car accident, and they end up having to not really raise, but take in their 17-year-old nephew. And again, there's a lot of secrecy and heartache and drama. I won't say any more because then that'll give too much away. Thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoyed being here and sharing my story with you. And thank you, Amanda, for that initial phone call. And yeah, okay, thank you.